The bitter wind cut through the quiet streets of Maple Valley, carrying with it the kind of stillness that made even seasoned police officers uneasy. Lieutenant Rachel Hayes had spent years patrolling these streets, but tonight something felt different. She couldn't shake the strange knot in her stomach as she drove down a dimly lit alley, her headlights illuminating piles of trash and broken crates. Then she saw it. A small figure, huddled in a shadowed corner, barely visible under a thin, tattered blanket. Rachel hit the brakes, her heart pounding. Stepping out of her car, she adjusted her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. "Hello?" she called gently, crouching down to make herself smaller, less intimidating. The figure stirred, and as Rachel moved closer, she saw him. A boy, no older than 5, shivering uncontrollably. His cheeks were raw from the cold, his clothes little more than thin rags. Wide, fearful eyes met hers, and Rachel felt her breath hitch. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling in front of him. "It's okay. I'm here to help." The boy didn't answer. Instead, he shrank back further into the corner, clutching the blanket around his tiny frame. Rachel lowered her flashlight, making her voice as calm as possible. "Are you hurt? Where's your family?" He shook his head, his small hands trembling. I don't know," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. Rachel's chest tightened. How could a child this young be alone in the freezing night with no one looking for him? She noticed faint bruises on his arms, the kind that told stories of pain and neglect. Her instinct screamed at her to call Child Protective Services, to follow the protocol. But as she looked into his tear-filled eyes, she knew she couldn't leave him here. Not tonight. "All right, buddy," Rachel said, wrapping her own jacket around him. "You're coming with me. We'll figure this out together." She carried him to her patrol car, cradling him like he was the most fragile thing in the world. The boy didn't resist. In fact, as she buckled him into the seat, he reached out and held on to her hand. Back at her apartment, Rachel prepared a simple meal of soup and bread. The boy sat quietly at the kitchen table, his wide eyes scanning the room. He still hadn't said much, but he ate hungrily, the color slowly returning to his pale cheeks. Rachel sat across from him, studying him carefully. "Do you have a name?" The boy paused, his brow furrowing. Then he shook his head. "I don't remember." Rachel's heart ached at the simplicity of his answer. She reached out, gently resting her hand on his. "How about I call you Noah, just for now, until we figure things out?" For the first time, the boy's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Noah," he repeated softly. "Okay." That night, Rachel tucked him into the guest bed, draping an extra blanket over him. As she turned to leave, a small voice stopped her. "Will you stay?" Rachel turned back, her heart clenching at the vulnerability in his tone. She knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I'll stay as long as you need, Noah. You're safe now." Rachel's decision to take Noah in was just the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. What challenges lie ahead? And how can one act of compassion ripple out to affect an entire community? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that inspire and uplift. Let us know in the comments, what would you do if you found someone in need on a cold night like this? Together, let's share kindness and hope with the world. The morning sun peeked through the curtains of Rachel Hayes' small apartment, casting a warm glow over the living room. On the couch, Noah sat quietly, clutching a steaming mug of cocoa Rachel had made for him. His small frame looked even more fragile in the soft light, but there was a calmness about him now, like the storm that had surrounded him the night before was beginning to fade. Rachel, still in her police uniform from the long night, sat across from him with a notepad. She wanted to know more, needed to understand how a boy like Noah had ended up alone on the streets in the dead of winter. But she also knew not to push too hard. Trust, she had learned, was earned one careful step at a time. "Noah," she began gently, "do you remember anything about where you came from, your family, anyone I can call?" The boy stared into his mug, his fingers wrapped tightly around it. After a long pause, he shook his head. I don't know." Rachel's heart clenched. She had seen children like Noah before, ones who carried bruises, not just on their bodies, but in their hearts. "That's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to remember everything right now. You're safe here, and we'll figure it out together." Over the next few days, Rachel began piecing together fragments of Noah's story. She noticed the way he flinched at sudden movements, how he avoided looking people in the eye. She saw the faint scars on his arms and legs, the way he hesitated before speaking, as if afraid his words would bring punishment. It wasn't hard to guess that Noah had been through more than any child his age should ever endure. Rachel contacted Anna, the social worker assigned to Noah's case, to report what she had found. "I'm telling you, Anna, this boy has been through Aris. This boy has been through hell. I've seen signs of abuse before, and he has them all." Anna sighed on the other end of the line. "It's heartbreaking, Rachel, but we need to follow protocol. Noah should be placed in foster care while we investigate." Rachel glanced into the living room where Noah was sketching in a notebook she had given him. He was drawing a house with a tall tree in front, the kind of idyllic home every child dreams of. She clenched her jaw. "I'm not sending him to another unfamiliar place, not after what he's been through." "Rachel," Anna said carefully, "are you saying you want to keep him? Do you understand what that means?" "I do," Rachel replied firmly. "He needs stability, and I can give him that." Rachel's decision wasn't without its challenges. Her colleagues at the precinct had mixed reactions when they found out she was fostering Noah. "You're taking on a lot, Hayes," one officer remarked. "This job is already hard enough without adding a kid to the mix." Rachel bristled, but kept her tone steady. "He's not just a kid. He's someone who needs a chance." Her closest friend and partner, Officer Mike Torres, pulled her aside after the meeting. "You sure about this, Rachel? You've been through a lot yourself." Rachel nodded. "I'm sure, Mike. He needs someone to fight for him, and I can't turn my back on him." Still, Rachel couldn't deny the weight of her new responsibilities. Her shifts were long and unpredictable, and Noah's quiet but persistent fear of being abandoned only added to her worry. But every time she saw his shy smile or heard his soft laughter, she knew she had made the right choice. One evening, as Rachel tucked Noah into bed, he looked up at her with wide, questioning eyes. "Will I always stay here?" he asked hesitantly. Rachel sat down beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Do you want to stay?" Noah nodded quickly. "Yes, but what if you get tired of me?" Rachel's throat tightened. She leaned in, her hands resting gently on his small shoulders. "Noah, listen to me. I will never get tired of you. You're not just staying here. You're part of my family now, and families don't give up on each other." Tears welled in Noah's eyes, and he threw his arms around her neck. "I want to stay forever." Rachel held him tightly, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Then forever it is." Rachel's decision to make Noah a permanent part of her life brought unexpected moments of joy. She discovered that Noah had a natural talent for art, often spending hours drawing pictures of trees, animals, and imaginary worlds. One day, he proudly handed her a drawing of a police officer standing under a tree, holding hands with a small boy. "Is this us?" Rachel asked, her voice thick with emotion. Noah nodded. "You're my hero." Rachel blinked back tears as she pulled him into a hug. "And you're mine." But her decision also brought challenges. The balance between her demanding job and her new role as a mother often left her exhausted. Some nights, she stayed up late reviewing case files, only to be woken by Noah's nightmares. Yet through it all, Rachel felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known she was missing. As the days turned into weeks, Noah began to trust more, smile more, and laugh more. Rachel found herself changing too. She learned to slow down, to appreciate the small moments, like the way Noah's face lit up when he discovered a new bird on their walks, or the way he carefully set the table for dinner without being asked. One night, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Noah leaned his head against her shoulder. "Mom?" Rachel's heart skipped a beat. It was the first time he had called her that. "Yes, buddy. Thanks for picking me," he said softly. Rachel wrapped her arm around him, her voice thick with emotion. "I think you picked me too." Rachel's decision to take Noah in wasn't just about saving him. It was about saving herself. Together, they were building a life filled with love, trust, and hope, proving that even the hardest decisions can lead to the greatest rewards. Rachel Hayes had faced countless challenges in her career as a police officer, but none prepared her for the subtle, persistent judgment she encountered as a mother. Her decision to adopt Noah had been met with mixed reactions at the precinct, but she hadn't anticipated how deep-rooted societal biases would affect them both. Noah had settled into his new school, but it wasn't without difficulty. Rachel noticed his reluctance to talk about his day and how his bright, curious energy seemed dimmer when she picked him up in the afternoons. She attributed it to adjustment at first, until one particular evening. Rachel was preparing dinner when Noah walked into the kitchen, his shoulders slumped. He climbed onto a stool at the counter, watching her stir the pot of soup. "Mom," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "why do people look at me like I did something wrong?" Rachel froze, her heart breaking at the weight of his words. She turned off the stove and knelt beside him, gently taking his hands in hers. "What do you mean, buddy?" "At school?" he said, his eyes welling with tears. "The other kids don't want to sit with me. Their parents look at me funny when you drop me off. Did I do something bad?" Rachel pulled him into a hug, her voice trembling with emotion. "No, Noah, you haven't done anything wrong. Sometimes, when people see someone who's different, they don't know how to act. But that doesn't make it your fault. You're perfect, just the way you are." Noah sniffled, wiping his tears with his sleeve. "It doesn't feel like it." Rachel cupped his face, her gaze steady and full of love. "Listen to me. You are strong and you are brave. The world might not always understand that, but I do, and I'll always be here to remind you." Rachel's colleagues at the precinct weren't immune to the whispers either. While some supported her decision, others were less accepting. She was certain they'd understood the knowledge she had and had not put themselves in danger. "You're distracted, Hayes," one officer remarked during a team meeting. "This job isn't compatible with raising a kid, especially one who might bring complications." Rachel's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone measured. "Noah isn't a complication. He's my son. And if you think being a parent makes me any less capable, you don't know me at all." Officer Mike Torres, Rachel's closest ally, stepped in. "Give her a break," he said sharply. "She's doing a hell of a job balancing everything. Maybe we could all learn a thing or two from her." Rachel shot Mike a grateful glance, but the doubt lingering in the room was undeniable. Still, she resolved to prove them wrong, not just for her own sake, but for Noah's. At school, the situation worsened. Noah's classmates excluded him from games, whispering about his mysterious background. Their parents, fueled by small-town gossip, avoided Rachel at drop-offs, their glances filled with thinly veiled judgment. One day, Noah came home with a crumpled note in his backpack. It read, "You don't belong here." Rachel's hands trembled as she read it, anger and heartbreak colliding in her chest. She sat Noah down at the kitchen table, her voice calm but firm. "Who gave this to you?" Noah hesitated. "I don't know. I found it in my locker." Rachel took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to storm into the school demanding answers. Instead, she leaned closer to Noah. "Listen to me, buddy. You do belong here. People who say things like this are wrong, and it's not your job to make them understand. It's my job to protect you, and I promise I will." Noah nodded, but the sadness in his eyes lingered. Determined to address the issue, Rachel met with Mrs. Green, Noah's teacher. "I understand kids can be cruel, but this is unacceptable," Rachel said, showing her the note. Mrs. Green frowned, her face filled with genuine concern. "I'll address this immediately. Noah deserves better." The next day, Mrs. Green held a class discussion about kindness and understanding, sharing a story about a boy who overcame struggles to become a hero. While she didn't mention Noah directly, the message was clear. Slowly, the atmosphere in the classroom began to shift. One afternoon, as Rachel picked Noah up from school, he ran toward her with a smile. "Mom, Jack asked if I wanted to play soccer with him and the other kids at recess, and I scored a goal." Rachel knelt down, wrapping him in a hug. "That's amazing, buddy. I'm so proud of you." For the first time, she saw a spark of confidence return to Noah's eyes. That evening, Noah sat at the kitchen table, working on a drawing. It was a picture of two trees, one small and fragile, the other tall and strong, their roots intertwined. At the bottom, he had written, "Together, we grow." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes as she knelt beside him. "This is beautiful, Noah. Is this us?" He nodded. You're the big tree. You keep me safe." Rachel hugged him tightly, her heart full. "And you make me stronger, buddy. Don't ever forget that." Rachel's determination to protect and uplift Noah only grew. She knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but together they were building something unbreakable, a bond that no judgment or prejudice could ever destroy. The bond between Rachel Hayes and Noah grew stronger with each passing day. They settled into a routine that brought stability to their lives: dinners together, bedtime stories, and weekend walks in the park. Rachel had gone from being a protective guardian to a devoted mother, and Noah's once guarded demeanor softened under her unwavering care. But as much as they had grown together, life had its challenges, and Rachel was reminded that being a mother was a role that demanded more than love. It required sacrifice. Rachel discovered that the small, seemingly ordinary moments with Noah were the ones that mattered most. One evening, as they sat together working on a jigsaw puzzle, Noah looked up suddenly and asked, "Mom, do you think I'll ever stop being scared?" Rachel paused, her hand stilling over the puzzle piece she was holding. She knelt beside him, her voice calm and steady. "I think someone should help us. I want to be like Wolfgar. And bigger." He grimly shook his head. "You know what helps?" Noah tilted his head, his wide eyes filled with curiosity. "What?" "Noah, having someone who believes in you," Rachel said. "And I believe in you, Noah, every single day." Noah smiled softly, leaning against her. "I believe in you too." Rachel hugged him tightly, her heart swelling with love. It was moments like these that reminded her why she had made the choice to bring Noah into her life. Rachel knew that the world could be harsh, and she wanted Noah to feel empowered to face it. One Saturday morning, she brought him to the local park where she often jogged. She had a surprise for him, a basic self-defense lesson. "Well, do I need to learn this?" Noah asked, looking skeptical. "'Cause I want you to feel strong," Rachel said, kneeling to his level. "You don't have to fight anyone, but knowing how to protect yourself can help you feel less scared." Noah nodded, and together they practiced simple moves. At first he stumbled and hesitated, but Rachel's encouragement spurred him on. By the end of the session, he stood taller, a flicker of confidence in his eyes. "You're a quick learner," Rachel said, ruffling his hair. "You've got this, buddy." Noah grinned, his cheeks flushed with pride. "Thanks, Mom." The first true test of their bond came on a cold, rainy night. Rachel was called to assist with a dangerous operation, a standoff with an armed suspect who had barricaded himself in a warehouse. She hesitated, knowing the risks, but duty called. "Mrs. Jenkins will stay with you tonight," Rachel told Noah, kneeling in front of him. "I might be late, but I'll come back as soon as I can." Noah's face clouded with worry. "What if something happens to you?" Rachel placed her hands on his shoulders, her voice firm but gentle. "I'll be careful, I promise. And remember, you're my reason to come home. I'll always come back to you." Noah nodded, though tears glistened in his eyes. "Be safe, Mom." The operation turned out to be more dangerous than Rachel anticipated. She was injured during the standoff, a minor gunshot wound to her shoulder, but the team managed to resolve the situation and apprehend the suspect. Despite her injury, Rachel's thoughts were only of Noah as she was rushed to the hospital. Madly, she raved about the suspect, naming someone who appeared in plenty of space in Rachel's mind. When Rachel finally woke up, she found Noah sitting by her bedside, clutching a drawing in his hands. His face lit up when he saw her open her eyes. "Mom!" he exclaimed, carefully climbing onto the bed to hug her. "You're okay!" Rachel winced slightly but wrapped her good arm around him. "I'm okay, buddy. I told you I'd come back." Noah handed her the drawing. It was of a superhero with a badge on their chest and a small boy holding their hand. Above it he had written, "You're my superhero, Mom." Rachel blinked back tears, her voice breaking. "This is beautiful, Noah. Thank you." "You're the bravest person I know," he said softly. "I want to be brave like you." Rachel smiled, her heart full despite the pain in her shoulder. "You already are, buddy. You're the bravest person I know." Rachel's injury forced her to take some time off work, giving her a chance to reevaluate her priorities. When her captain offered her a promotion to a leadership role, one that would mean longer hours and more responsibilities, Rachel surprised everyone by turning it down. "It's a great opportunity, Hayes," her captain said, clearly baffled. "Why pass it up?" Rachel smiled. "Because I have someone at home who needs me more. My job is important, but being Noah's mom is the most important thing I'll ever do." Word of Rachel's decision spread quickly through the precinct, earning her respect from even her toughest critics. Her partner Mike summed it up best when he said, "Hayes, you're not just a great cop, you're a great mom. That kid's lucky to have you." As Rachel recovered, Noah took on the role of caretaker in small but touching ways. He would leave notes on the fridge, "I fed the cat, love Noah," or "Don't forget your medicine, Mom," and set the table for dinner every night. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Noah reached for Rachel's hand. "Mom, do you think I can be a hero like you one day?" Rachel squeezed his hand, her voice filled with emotion. "You already are, Noah. You're my hero every single day." Noah smiled, resting his head on her shoulder. I'm glad you're my mom. And I'm glad you're my son, Rachel whispered, pressing a kiss to his forehead. Rachel and Noah's bond had been tested, but it only grew stronger through every trial they faced together. Their love was a reminder that family isn't just about where you come from. It's about who stands beside you, no matter what. Rachel Hayes sat at her desk late one evening, sifting through stacks of case files under the harsh fluorescent lights of the precinct. The quiet hum of the station was interrupted only by the occasional ring of a phone or the murmur of distant conversations. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples, when her partner, Mike Torres, dropped a folder on her desk. "This just came in," he said, his voice low. "It's about that trafficking ring we've been tracking. You might want to take a look." Rachel opened the folder, her eyes scanning the contents. Each line felt heavier than the last. The report detailed a series of investigations into a human trafficking operation suspected of targeting vulnerable children. Her stomach tightened as she read further. One detail stopped her cold, a description of a property where several children had been kept. The layout matched Noah's fragmented memories. The large house, the small rooms, and the crying children. Rachel's heart pounded. Could this be connected to Noah? Rachel's mind raced as she drove home that night. When she entered the apartment, she found Noah at the kitchen table, carefully coloring a picture of a dog. His face lit up when he saw her. "Hi, Mom," he said, holding up the drawing. "Do you like it?" "It's great, buddy," Rachel replied, forcing a smile. She sat down beside him, her tone soft but serious. "Noah, can we talk for a minute?" Noah set down his crayons, his smile fading. "Am I in trouble?" "Oh." Rachel shook her head, taking his small hand in hers. "Not at all. I just want to ask you about something. Do you remember the house you told me about, the one you ran away from? Can you tell me anything else about it?" Noah's expression darkened, and he fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "I don't like thinking about it," he whispered. "Oh, I know, sweetheart," Rachel said gently, "but it might help us understand what happened to you and make sure no one else gets hurt." After a long pause, Noah nodded. "There were other kids there," he said quietly. "Some of them were really little. I think they wanted to take us somewhere, but I ran before they could." Rachel felt a lump in her throat. She reached out, pulling him into a hug. You're so brave, Noah. Thank you for telling me." The next day, Rachel shared Noah's memories with her team. They began cross-referencing his descriptions with their existing evidence, piecing together a clearer picture of the trafficking ring's operations. "We might have a lead on the location of their base," Mike said during a briefing. "It's an abandoned warehouse just outside town, near where Noah was found." Rachel's chest tightened. The idea of Noah being so close to such danger made her blood boil. "We need to move quickly," she said. "If they're still operating, we can't waste any time." But Rachel's involvement in the case brought new risks. She noticed an unfamiliar car parked near her apartment one evening, its engine idling before driving away as she approached. Her instincts screamed that someone was watching them. That night, she sat down with Noah. "Buddy, I need you to listen carefully," she said, kneeling beside him. "There are some bad people out there, and they might try to find us because we're trying to stop them. But I promise, I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." Noah's eyes filled with fear. "Is it my fault?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Did I bring trouble to you?" Rachel's heart broke at his words. She pulled him into a tight hug. "No, sweetheart, this is not your fault. You're not the problem. You're the reason I'm strong enough to fight this." "What about the fucking bees? The guy that attacked on our window, half the roof is gone, and we have to find him." As the team prepared for a raid on the suspected warehouse, Rachel found herself grappling with doubts. The danger was real, and the risks were high. She worried not just for her own safety, but for Noah's well-being if something happened to her. Late one night, Rachel confided in Mike. "What if I'm making a mistake? What if I can't protect him?" Mike leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Rachel, you've already done more for that boy than most people ever would. You've given him a home, love, and a chance at a real future. That's what makes you a great mom and a damn good cop." Rachel nodded, though the weight of her fears lingered. She knew she couldn't let them hold her back. She had a duty to protect Noah and ensure that no other child suffered like he had. The raid on the warehouse was tense. Rachel stayed behind at the station, monitoring the operation through a live feed. Her heart pounded as the officers moved in, their voices crackling over the radio. "We've got movement," one officer reported. "Looks like several suspects are fleeing the scene." Another voice chimed in. "We've found children. Repeat, children are safe." Relief washed over Rachel, but it was short-lived. "Suspects are heavily armed," an officer warned. "Requesting backup." "What's the scene plan?" "Yes, ma'am." Rachel gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. She hated feeling powerless, knowing her team was in danger while she waited for news. By morning, the operation was over. Several suspects had been apprehended, and the children rescued from the warehouse were being cared for by social services. As Rachel reviewed the reports, she felt a mix of relief and anger. The trafficking ring had suffered a major blow, but the fight wasn't over. When Rachel returned home that evening, Noah ran to her, his arms wrapping tightly around her waist. "You're okay," he exclaimed, his voice filled with relief. She confided in him that she had been assaulted 1 week earlier. Shortly afterward, she was pregnant with their second child. Rachel knelt down, holding him close. "And so are you, buddy. The bad guys won't hurt anyone else." In the days that followed, Rachel worked closely with social services to help the rescued children find new homes. Seeing their smiles reminded her of how far Noah had come and how much further he could go. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Noah leaned his head on her shoulder. "Mom, do you think the other kids will be okay now?" Rachel kissed the top of his head. "I think they'll be okay, thanks to you. You were brave enough to tell your story, and that helped us save them." Noah smiled, his eyes shining with hope. "I want to help people when I grow up, like you." Rachel felt a lump rise in her throat. "You already do, buddy. More than you know." The morning was cold and gray as Rachel Hayes stood outside the precinct, briefing her team on what could be the most dangerous mission of her career. After weeks of relentless investigation, they had tracked down the leaders of the human trafficking ring that had haunted her and Noah's lives. The operation was risky, but Rachel's determination was unshakable. She wasn't just fighting for justice. She was fighting for Noah and every other child who had suffered at the hands of these criminals. Before leaving for the mission, Rachel knelt in front of Noah at their apartment. His small hands gripped hers tightly, his face pale with worry. "Do you have to go?" he asked, his voice trembling. Rachel nodded, her heart heavy. "I do, buddy. These are the people who hurt you and the other kids. I can't let them hurt anyone else." Tears welled up in Noah's eyes. "But what if something happens to you?" Rachel placed her hands on his shoulders, her gaze steady. "I promise I'll do everything I can to come back to you. And no matter what happens, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You make me stronger, Noah." He sniffled but nodded. "Be careful, Mom." Rachel hugged him tightly, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I will. You're my reason to fight." The team moved in under the cover of darkness, the air thick with tension. The target was a remote compound surrounded by dense woods, a fortress designed to hide the crimes committed within. Rachel led her unit, her every sense on high alert. As they approached the compound, the sound of rustling leaves and distant voices grew louder. Suddenly, a shout rang out, followed by gunfire. The team sprang into action, breaching the gates and engaging the suspects. Rachel's pulse raced as she moved through the chaos, her focus razor sharp. Every step brought her closer to the truth about Noah's past and the chance to dismantle the ring once and for all. Inside the compound, Rachel found herself face to face with one of the ringleaders. The man smirked, holding a young child as a shield. Rachel's heart pounded, but she didn't hesitate. "Let the kid go," she commanded, her voice cold and steady. The man laughed, but his confidence faltered as Rachel and her team closed in. In a tense standoff, Rachel managed to disarm him and pull the child to safety. As she escorted the boy outside, the compound erupted in chaos, flames licking at the edges of the building as smoke billowed into the night sky. Rachel's relief was short-lived. A shout from behind warned her of an incoming threat, a suspect lunging toward her with a weapon. She turned just in time to block the attack, but stumbled, the force knocking her to the ground. Pain shot through her arm as the suspect loomed over her, weapon raised. Before he could strike, Officer Mike Torres appeared, tackling the man and subduing him. "You okay, Hayes?" Mike asked, helping her to her feet. Rachel nodded, wincing as she cradled her injured arm. "Thanks, Mike. I owe you one." "You can pay me back by making it out of here in one piece," Mike said with a grin. The operation was a success. The trafficking ring was dismantled and several children were rescued, their terrified faces reminding Rachel of Noah's first night with her. As she returned to the precinct with her team, exhaustion set in, but so did an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. When Rachel finally arrived home, Noah ran to her, his arms wrapping tightly around her waist. "You're okay," he cried, tears streaming down his face. Rachel knelt down, ignoring the pain in her arm, and hugged him fiercely. "I'm okay, buddy. It's over. They won't hurt anyone else." Noah pulled back, his small hands gripping her shoulders. "You're my hero, Mom." Rachel smiled, her own tears falling. "You're mine too." Word of Rachel's bravery spread quickly through Maple Valley. The community, once hesitant to accept Rachel's decision to adopt Noah, rallied around her. A small ceremony was organized at the town square to honor her and the entire team. The mayor stood before the gathered crowd, his voice filled with emotion. "Today, we recognize Lieutenant Rachel Hayes not just for her dedication as an officer, but for her unwavering love and courage as a mother. She reminds us all of the power of compassion and the strength it takes to fight for what's right." Rachel stood beside Noah, who clung to her hand, his face glowing with pride. As applause echoed through the square, Rachel felt a profound sense of belonging, not just for herself, but for Noah too. In the weeks that followed, Noah began to thrive in ways Rachel had never imagined. His classmates, once distant, began including him in games and activities. One afternoon, as Rachel watched from the sidelines, she saw Noah laughing with a group of boys, his joy infectious. When they walked home together, Noah looked up at her. "Mom, do you think people can really change?" Rachel smiled, squeezing his hand. "I do, and sometimes it just takes someone brave enough to show them how." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "Then I want to help people too, like you." Rachel knelt beside him, her voice filled with emotion. "You already do, buddy. More than you know." Rachel's fight against the trafficking ring wasn't just about justice. It was about protecting the life she and Noah had built together. Their bond, forged in love and strengthened through every trial, proved that even in the face of darkness, hope and courage could light the way. Spring had come to Maple Valley, washing away the gray of winter and bringing with it a sense of renewal. The town was quieter now, the shadows of the past replaced by the warm hum of community life. For Rachel Hayes and Noah, it felt like the beginning of something new, something they had both worked so hard to build. Noah's laughter echoed through the park as he played soccer with his classmates. Rachel watched from a nearby bench, her heart swelling with pride. It had taken time, but the boy who once struggled to trust and belong was now thriving. His courage had inspired not just Rachel, but the entire town. "Nice shot, Noah," one of the boys called out, giving him a high five. Rachel smiled as she saw Noah's confidence shine. He was no longer the shy, uncertain child she had found that cold night. He was becoming the brave and compassionate young man she always knew he could be. Ah, yes. Later that evening, Rachel and Noah sat together at the kitchen table, assembling a scrapbook filled with pictures and memories of their journey together. Noah carefully glued in a photograph of them standing in front of the town's park, surrounded by friends from the community. "Mom," Noah said, looking up, "do you think it's okay to feel happy now?" Rachel reached across the table, taking his hand. "It's more than okay, buddy. You deserve to be happy. You've been through so much, and you've come out stronger than anyone I know." Noah smiled, his eyes glistening with tears. "I couldn't have done it without you." Rachel leaned forward, her voice soft but full of conviction. "And I couldn't have done it without you, Noah. You taught me so much about love, resilience, and what it really means to be a family." The following weekend, the town hosted a gathering in the park to honor the children rescued from the trafficking ring and to celebrate the bravery of Rachel and her team. Noah, holding Rachel's hand, was invited to speak. Standing before the crowd, Noah took a deep breath, his voice steady as he said, "When my mom found me, I didn't think I belonged anywhere. But she showed me that family isn't about where you come from. It's about who loves you and stands by you. And now, I know I belong." The crowd erupted into applause, and Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. She had never been prouder. That night, as Rachel tucked Noah into bed, he asked her a question that stayed with her long after he had fallen asleep. "Mom, do you think people can always change if someone believes in them?" Rachel brushed his hair back, her voice filled with warmth. "I think change starts with love, Noah. When someone believes in you, it makes you believe in yourself. And when we believe in ourselves, we can do incredible things." Rachel and Noah's story is a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the courage to fight for what truly matters. Their journey reminds us that even in the face of darkness, a single act of compassion can change not just one life, but many. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where someone's belief in you made all the difference? Or have you been the person who inspired someone else to change? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear how love and hope have shaped your life. If this story touched your heart, please like this video to support stories of courage and kindness. Share it with someone who needs a reminder of the power of love. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit. Together, let's create a world where everyone feels they belong. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.